Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you might be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Ephesians 6:10-13. On September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was murdered, and we all saw it. When we consider the verse above, and consider the spiritual nature of this battle, we tend to think that because we do not battle against flesh and blood, that flesh and blood won't ever be spilled. But be sure of this: the enemy is perfectly happy to spill the blood of the saints whenever given the chance. The death of Charlie Kirk has made plain for all to see what we've already known in our hearts, and some of us have been saying for a long time. There is no mercy from the enemy, and the enemy hates you because of what you believe. Consider Charlie Kirk. He was not an advocate of violence as a means of persuasion. His entire platform was organization and debate as political action. His message was distinctly Christian. The people who killed him did not hate him for his tone. They didn't hate him for his rhetoric. They hated him because he believed what you believe and had the courage to say it out loud. They hated him because he was a Christian, a real one, an imperfect one, but a bona fide, faith in Jesus alone for salvation, Jesus is King Christian. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, but the enemy is happy to see it spilled anyway. Those celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, inasmuch as you agree with his Christian beliefs, would celebrate your death if you had his courage and they knew your name. But make no mistake, this battle is against the rulers, authorities, cosmic powers, etc., meaning this is a spiritual battle. And the death of Charlie Kirk bears all the marks of this. Any Christian who is a public figure, whether it be a following of millions, a podcast of hundreds, a small business owner, or the faithful pastor of a church of 50, they all know that courageous Christian faith, not kept in the private corners of our homes, makes you a target for spiritual warfare. While many pray specifically for these people, it is often generic. Our prayers often lack a recognition of the incarnational realities of spiritual warfare, if they include the spiritual aspect at all. What I mean by this is that our prayers often lack specificity and purpose. We may pray for the spiritual protection of someone like Charlie Kirk or our local pastor, but what kind of spiritual protection? Many of us, having lived through the horrors of infidelity in a church, may be as specific as to pray that they may not fall into sin. And this is good. Yet, do we know what forms of spiritual attack may come and where it comes from? On September 8th, just 2 days before his assassination, Jezebel, a leftist publication, posted an article entitled, "We Paid Some Etsy Witches to Curse Charlie Kirk." The text of the article has since been taken down with the following message in its place. Quote, "Editor's note. On Monday, September 8th, we published the humorous piece titled, 'We Paid Some Etsy Witches to Curse Charlie Kirk.' The piece was intended as satire and made it absolutely clear that we wished no physical harm. We stand by every word. But in light of Wednesday's events and on the recommendation of our lawyers, we have removed the text. To be clear, this decision was driven by an abundance of caution for our staff and to avoid the piece being misused in a tense and volatile environment, not by a change in our editorial judgment. We may republish it at a later date, but out of compassion for the victim's family, we want to make clear that we prioritize an end to violence over anyone wanting to read about Etsy witches." End quote. But the internet never forgets. You can find the internet archived version at the link in the show notes. The article is meant to be humorous in tone, and I am by no means making an accusation that Jezebel or the author of the article was doing anything they thought would actually do him any harm. But the little boy playing with matches may not have meant to start a forest fire, but the consequences of his actions are there nonetheless. The reality is that Charlie Kirk, because he is hated for his basic traditional Christian beliefs, found himself in their journalistic crosshairs and the butt of many jokes. The problem is that they infuse these jokes with seemingly real witchcraft. For those who are listening to our podcast, this will come as no surprise, but witchcraft is real. Magic can work. The Bible doesn't tell you not to use divination because it's silly. It tells you not to use it because it's evil. The problem for the left is that they either A, believe that evil things are a joke, or B, willingly embrace it under the guise of equality. To demonstrate this, I'm going to provide some select quotes from the article in question. Disclaimer: the ethics of cursing a stranger. Now, is it ethical to curse a man I've never met? Probably not. But is it unethical to let him keep talking? Yes. So here we are, in the gray area. I want to make it clear I'm not calling on dark forces to cause him harm. I just want him to wake up every morning with an inexplicable zit. I want his podcast microphone to malfunction every time he hits record. I want his blue blazers to suddenly all be one size too small. I want one of his socks to always be sliding down his foot. I want his thumb to grow too big to tweet. To ruin his day with the collective feminist power of the Etsy coven would be my life's greatest joy. End quote. Whilst the writer makes it clear that she doesn't want him harmed, she then goes on to list a series of annoyances and low-grade harm. She then describes her journey to find a witch and curses to place. Quote, after placing my first spell, in all caps, make everyone hate him, in all caps, I was left with more questions than answers. How long would it take to kick in? Should I have splurged for a pricier spell to make it work faster? Shortly after, the witch messaged me trying to upsell me a $50 spell booster. When I asked what it did, she explained it would amplify the energetic support of the main spell, or else I could let it unfold in its natural timing. I decided to trust the witch's will. For the, all caps, powerful hex spell, and all caps, I had to provide Kirk's date of birth for accuracy. The witch performed the hex, but her response was unsettling. I just completed your spell, and it was successful. You will see the first results within 2 to 3 weeks. However, I did notice disturbances, negative energy not only from you, but projected at you, likely from toxic family members, coworkers, or new acquaintances. End quote. The banter here and tone is playful, but listen now to the turn things take. Note that I have edited out some of the little jokes and have read the portions that describe the specific events only for brevity. Quote, the next day, the priestess sent me her proof of cast, a photograph in flames, the edges slowly curving inward, engulfing Charlie's ridiculous scrunched up little face. She whispered, I imagine, trust the unseen. Chills. I timed the purchase perfectly with the August new moon in Virgo. According to the astrology girls on TikTok, this specific new moon is the perfect time for forming new habits and aligning goals. My personal goal, cursing Kirk. The stars were aligned. Then there was more. According to ABC4, Utah State University students launched a petition to bar Kirk and Turning Point USA from visiting the campus on his college tour. Charlie Kirk, a highly polarizing figure, does not align with the core values and ideology that Utah State University strives to epitomize, the petition reads. The petition was launched on Friday, August 22nd, and had already been signed over 3,800 times. Could this be the make everyone hate him curse at work? End quote. The author then goes on to playfully describe a tweet pointing out how Charlie's head was growing bigger, a reference to arrogance, over his assessment of the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce engagement, and the author concludes with the following, quote, I believe this is it. Slowly over the course of the coming months, the circumference of Kirk's head will increase inch by inch until he becomes a literal human bobblehead. Or maybe it keeps growing until it eventually pops. Either way, it feels appropriate. End quote. While this description is clearly meant to be playful, it is nonetheless eerily close to what happened to Kirk. His head, shocked by the concussive wave of a .30-06 round fired from roughly 200 yards away in a very bobblehead-like motion, in fact. The shot, seemingly meant for his head, ended up popping but out of his neck. To make matters even more strange, the petition described in the article was meant to ban Charlie from speaking at a university in Utah. Now I grant that this is not the same college campus, but it is a campus less than 2 hours away from where he was shot. The petition ended with nearly 7,000 signatures, by the way. The article ends with the following, quote, "So, did my Etsy curses work? Time will tell. The forces move in mysterious ways, and as the priestess reminded me, spell work is a collaboration between the caster, the client, and the universe itself. For now, we can only trust in the timing of the great unknown. A special thank you to the witches of the modern age who work tirelessly to hex Republicans and topple conservative regimes, and the occasional ex-boyfriend. Your work is appreciated. And to you, Mr. Kirk, may the rash come swiftly." End quote. The ideology that dominates the left is more than willing to jokingly dabble in overt occultism to frustrate the work of those who hold to Christian norms. Many of you will remember the impromptu episode on the local satanic grotto performing an occultic black mass ritual earlier this year, where they had stated intent to perform a live abortion as part of a sacrificial element of the ceremony. That event ended in 3 arrests, by the way, 1 member of the satanic grotto and 2 Christians who attempted to stop the ceremony. The point is this: whether they believe it or not, the left is demonic and is willing to partake in wicked practices and witchcraft, the likes of which we haven't seen since before Salem. In addition to this influence and magical practice is now amplified by mass communication and social media technologies. For more on these ideas, go and listen to our Memes is Magic episode from season 1. But as a brief recap, the idea from that episode is essentially that many magical practices are tapping into the same symbolic language, catered to the specific context of the user with mediums that also fit that context. And the most potent medium of the internet age is the meme format. The meme format unknowingly taps into an ancient practice of sigil-style magic, where users pour intent into images and words with the hopes that those things would work together to manifest some outcome. While the Etsy witches may have been practicing a more overt form of this kind of magic, memes or otherwise, the apparent shooter was also doing a very similar thing. Very little is known about the shooter. At the time of this episode, the FBI has a suspect in custody, but innocent until proven guilty and all that. What has been shared is that the weapon recovered was an imported Mauser 30-06 bolt-action rifle. If you are unfamiliar with bolt-action rifles, when they are fired, the shooter must manually eject the casing from the spent round inside the weapon by releasing and working the action of a bolt backwards. In the case of Kirk's assassination, it would appear that the casing from the fatal round was left in the rifle that was recovered by the authorities. This casing then was recovered along with several other unspent cartridges. And here is where we get back to magic. The casings were engraved with the following messages. Quote, "Notices bulges, OWO, what's this?" End quote. Which is a reference to online trolling within leftist and more particularly transgender and furry communities, according to Know Your Meme. This was the fired casing and likely the bullet that took Kirk's life. The next casing, quote, "Hey fascist, catch," end quote. Clearly saying that someone labeled a fascist was meant to catch the bullet. This also included a series of arrows which related to calling down bombs in a popular video game. The next bullet casing said, quote, "Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao ciao ciao," end quote. This is an Italian phrase from a popular song adopted as a kind of anti-fascist anthem of sorts. And then finally, quote, "If you read this, you're gay, LMAO," end quote. This one seems self-explanatory as a mockery of those whom the left would consider homophobic. And what I want you all to understand is that this kind of thing is very much like what was described in Memes as Magic. Intent poured into words and images, meant to invoke some outcome. But this time, instead of an enter key to send the message on the internet, he pulled a trigger to send the message with a bullet, and sealed it with the blood of Charlie Kirk. This is overt witchcraft, and we can have no fellowship with it. Former Sword and Staff host Josh Robinson wrote a robust and helpful article for consideration. I will link it in the show notes, but I want to reflect on something he said, which echoes what I have just stated. Quote, "Perhaps I shouldn't be shocked. Since the beginning of Christianity, the world has often hated those who follow Christ. Jesus himself warned that there would come a time when people kill you and think they are offering service to God, and yet September 10th, 2025 feels like a breaking point. It feels like the day many everyday Americans, the so-called normies, finally woke up and realized neutrality is no longer an option. The veil has been ripped away. Any illusion of a porous live and let live society died yesterday amid the bullet casing on the Utah campus. There can be no solidarity with the kind of darkness that cheers on murder. The culture war is no longer a polite disagreement over ideas. It's an outright battle between light and darkness, life and death, truth and lies. Calls for coming together ring hollow when one side openly rejoices at the slaughter of innocents and political opponents. As I see the glee of these commentators over such atrocities, I recall a simple truth. What God joins together cannot be separated, and what Satan divides cannot be reunited. We have reached a point where trying to reunite with those animated by such hate would not be healing. It would be compromise with evil. I am angry at what has happened, but beneath the anger there is resolve. Yesterday was a turning point in our time. Now, even more clearly than during the riots and chaos of 2020 or the failed assassination attempt on President Trump, people can see what we're up against. Many who once tried to stay neutral have realized they cannot sit on the fence anymore. The post-World War II consensus, that decades-old vision of a liberal, open society where we all peacefully agree to disagree, has crumbled to dust. The mask is off. We see now that nice-sounding values of tolerance and inclusion do not extend to those who dissent from the new progressive orthodoxy. The weak gods of our age, the idols of openness, inclusion, and procedural liberalism have been revealed as frauds, impotent to restrain the violent hatred growing in our midst that they promised to hold back from descending upon the world. In truth, they are dead, or rather, they were never alive in the first place." End quote. I don't know exactly where we go from here, but here's my charge to you. If you are a listener who calls themselves a Christian and you have been dabbling with the godless ideologies of the left, know this. They are not simply preference. They are wicked. You cannot have both your leftism and Christ. Your loyalty to those ideals will inevitably prove your faith ingenuine, and you will adopt the ever-increasingly overt occult nature and practices that undergird them. Each yes to those ideologies is a no to King Jesus. Repent of it and turn to him. For those who are not Christians, but are shocked, saddened, and dismayed by the wickedness you saw in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, know that this is where your current faith leads you. Because it is against Christ, it must lead you to death and the death of others. No God, be he the triune God of the Bible or the heathen gods you worship, will let a different God stand. And King Jesus refuses to lose. Repent while there is still time. Do not sit idly by while you see the horror of the fruits of your belief so clearly on display. Turn to Christ, and he will forgive you. And to all of you, remember that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, that the spiritual battles are real, and the enemy would love to see you bleed. Now more than ever, be prepared. Be angry and do not sin. Live righteous lives, and in a world sinking into chaos, above all, stay tethered, everyone.